The Travel Transformation Podcast is proud to be partnered with Give the Goodness Global, an amazing global outreach project helping families in need all over Southeast Asia and beyond. Please check them out at Instagram.com/Give the Goodness Global today. And now on to the podcast episode.
Welcome to the Travel Transformation Podcast, where we talk all things travel and all things transformation, exploring the life-changing potential of solo travel, intentional travel, and location-independent working. Whether you're an aspiring digital nomad or simply wish to boost your confidence through epic travel experiences, I'm here to motivate and inspire you to go after all your wildest dreams. I'm Jessica Grace Coleman, author, certified travel coach, founder of the Travel Transformation Company, and your host for the Travel Transformation Podcast. Travel changed my life. Now let's change yours. You ready? Let's go. Welcome to the Travel Transformation Podcast, where we talk all things travel and all things transformation. My name is Jessica Grace Coleman and I'm your host. And today I'm talking to Karen McCarthy, who is a keynote speaker on resilience and change. No stranger to life's challenges, Karen McCarthy is a former barrister who battled a brain tumour that almost took her life, leaving her legally blind after surgical complications. Karen is now a keynote speaker. In her speech, she motivates and inspires others, as well as setting out an actionable framework for tackling change head-on. In this episode, we discuss the surgery that changed her life, the rehabilitation she had to go through, how meditation and Stoic philosophy helped her navigate this change, and how courage is contagious, and how she found motivation from others to get back out there and find her independence again. Karen's story really is remarkable, so let's get straight to the interview. Hi Karen, welcome to the podcast. Thank you so much for coming on today. How are you doing?
Hello Jessica, I'm really well. Thank you for having me. It's lovely to be here.
Okay, to start with, please can you give me and our listeners a bit of background info about you, where you're from, what you do, and a little bit about your story so far?
Absolutely. My name is Karen McCarthy. I live in Brisbane, Australia. I am trained as a lawyer. So I spent the first 15 years of my career working as a barrister in the Commonwealth Prosecutor's Office and later at an anti-corruption agency. In 2016, I suffered surgical complications that caused me to lose about 97% of my eyesight. Following that, I had a couple of years of really intense rehabilitation. I did go back to my job as a lawyer for a couple of years, but ultimately decided that wasn't where I wanted to expend my energy. So I now work as a keynote speaker, helping other lawyers to build the resilience to the challenges that are inherent in that work.
Wow. So, I mean, that's a huge story, a huge journey. So you mentioned the surgery there. Can you describe for people listening what your vision is like now, what you can see and can't see?
I generally describe it as indistinct shades of grey. So, yes, it could be a red shade of grey or a slightly blue shade of grey, but everything is kind of greyed out and low resolution, basically. So the lighting matters dramatically to what I can see. I actually ran into a friend the other day. So she's a new friend. She's a friend I've made in the last few years. And we've only until now met indoors. And I ran into her on the street the other day. It was a beautiful sunny day. The sky was blue. And she kind of pops out and says, "Hi, Karen." And I recognized her voice. And I'm like, that's what you look like.
Oh.
So, yes, it is difficult to know in any given situation how much I'm going to see. And because it is connected to a brain injury, it's almost like as I get tired towards the end of the day, things start to get a little fuzzier, both literally and figuratively for me.
And you mentioned that you had rehabilitation for 2 years. So what did that involve?
I was in hospital for 6 months. So for the first about 6 weeks, I was in and out of surgeries to try and kind of chase all of the various complications that were emerging. After that, through various manoeuvrings of my medical team, I got a spot at a brain injury rehabilitation unit at a hospital just down the road from where I live here in Brisbane. And I was a patient there for the balance of 6 months from when I first suffered those complications. While I was in hospital, I physically was in a really bad way. Initially, they didn't think that I had good enough prospects to be given a place in that facility. And so, as kind of various of my faculties came back online, the team were really surprised and they kind of got behind me. So I spent a lot of time there literally strapped into a wheelchair because I couldn't support my own body. I was speaking in a very, very quiet voice. So I worked with speech pathologists in relation to projecting my voice again. I had quite a lot of weakness through my hands as well as through my lower limbs. And the occupational therapists gave me this theraputty stuff, which was kind of like Play-Doh, and they would have me squeeze it and release it until one of my children came to visit and they swiped it to turn it into some little man that they would stick on the side of the bed. I also learned various skills once I got out of hospital in terms of electronic maneuverings, using voiceover and all of that sort of thing. And I now walk with a long white cane.
Wow. And you said that you went back to your old job for a while. I mean, I'm sure there were lots of them, but what were the main challenges around that? And how did you sort of deal with that, going back to the same job?
I didn't go back to exactly the same role with my employer. The job that I was doing before my injury required me to assess handwritten evidence in a lot of cases. So it was quite visual. So they reallocated my position into an internal legal team. I did lots of very interesting work like checking that HR policies complied with the relevant legislative regimes. It was terribly interesting. But it did give me an opportunity to really hone those skills with computers, but also with communicating with other people. It was incredibly helpful in that regard. Yes, it sort of built my confidence to go back out into the world.
And then was there a certain moment, or did it take a while of thinking about it before you decided to leave that and do what you do now?
It did take a while. I was incredibly frustrated with my efficiency, I guess, and my effectiveness in the role that I was in. So because I have both a vision impairment, so I can't read things visually, so I'm relying on voiceover, but I also have short-term memory impairment because of the brain injury. The combination of the two meant that getting through any kind of lengthy written task was just incredibly painful. I kind of had said along the way, if I had one without the other, I would have had more tools at my disposal to deal with the problems that arose. If I've got a bit of a dodgy memory, I just write myself notes, but then, of course, I can't read them. And I know that there are plenty of people out there, blind people with far less vision than I have, who do amazing work. There are judges and various lawyers around the place who are completely blind. And quite frankly, I envy the memories that they must have.
Yeah, wow. Now you do keynote speaking, which you mentioned before, and I was looking at your sheet and it's got so many great quotes on there. But you say, courage is contagious. You can catch it and you can spread it, which is so true. So can you tell me the story about the blind person you met, who you mentioned in your keynote, who struggled to navigate around her own home?
Yes. So not long after I came home from hospital, I thought that I should really get to know some people who had a similar life experience to me at this point. So I joined a telephone support group being run by Vision Australia. So the participants in this group were from all over the country. So it was highly unlikely that we would ever meet in person. One of the people in this group was a woman with an American accent. So it was fabulous because she was really easy to pick out when everybody started talking over the top of each other. Her name was Connie, and she was an incredible inspiration to me to really get back on with my life. And I tell the story in my keynote of a really challenging thing that she did that inspired me towards a goal that I really wanted to achieve.
Mm. And what was that goal that you wanted to achieve, or are we saving that for the keynote?
No, no, no. I'm happy to give you a spoiler alert. So my daughters were 8 and 10 when I lost my sight. I came home from hospital for the first time on my youngest daughter's 9th birthday. It was a bit of a surprise. My husband hadn't told the girls that I would be there. My elder daughter stood beside me and, she described all of the presents that her sister was given in such amazing detail. And it was just obvious that they were so excited to have me back home, that it was kind of that moment where I'd just thought to myself, I need to put aside any of my own fears or concerns or grief, really, over my situation and build some skills so that I could be a really involved mother again. And the main way that I felt that I should start doing that was to be able to walk them to and from school. We don't live far from the school, but we were awful, mollycoddling parents who still drove them the 500 metres up the hill to school every day. So without being able to drive, I really wanted to be a part of that journey, which was such a big part of their day. So to do that, I sought the assistance of an orientation and mobility instructor who works with Vision Australia. And he was a really funny guy, actually. It was really lovely to work with. So to begin with, I would go to their office and we would walk around the halls and he would encourage me, he would quiz me on what it is that I was seeing as I went. And I would always miss the fire extinguisher that was off to the right-hand side of that hallway. Now, I remember that it was the right-hand side of that hallway because later I realised that my field of vision, such as it is actually a little bit skew-if. So I can see from about, can you see me here? This whole section is completely black because I only see through my left eye. So that was fascinating and really quite useful to know as I started to walk around the streets of my local area.
And so you made it, you reached the goal?
Yeah, I did. So he started coming to my neighbourhood. We'd walk around the block together. He'd walk 100 metres ahead and then I would go and meet him. We'd go clockwise, we'd go anti-clockwise, we'd go at different times of day, different days of the week. And then we started going up to the school in the middle of the day when there were no other cars around. And then, those peak drop-off and pick-up times. And it was one Saturday morning when I woke up, the light was just right. And for some reason, I don't know, I just felt really quietly confident. So I put my phone in my pocket. I walk out the front door. The rest of the family are asleep because I kind of think that if I wake them up, they will stop me or insist that they come too. And I do the walk to school. And I get up there and I take out my phone and I take a selfie and then I come back home and we celebrate. Yes, I report that back to a brain injury support group that I am also in. And it inspires someone else to take a step towards a goal that they were looking toward to achieve. So yes, it was lovely.
No, that's amazing. I love that you took a selfie as well for proof.
I did, yes. Well, not really. You need to come to a keynote to find out about that story.
Oh, okay.
It was Connie, actually, who inspired me on that weekend, bright sunny morning to do it, because she had come back to the group after a couple of weeks' absence to report that she had flown to New York on her own, arriving in the middle of the night, and her friends aren't there to meet her. So she walks through the airport, she finds the cab rank, she gets in a cab, and she goes and knocks on their door. Now, to put that in context, this is a woman who routinely would ask for advice around how she could stop hitting her head on the clothesline in her backyard.
Oh, wow.
Here in Australia, we have what we call a hills hoist. So it's like a rotary clothesline, a single pole in the middle and then a big kind of square rotating set of lines around the top.
Mm-hmm.
They're kind of planted in the back of everyone's, I'm sure by British standards, giant backyards here. And yes, so she would bang her head. And so jokingly, we suggested that she get herself a crash helmet, because you can order those online and they just turn up at your door. Yes, and that she wear her crash whenever she ventured into her backyard. So crash helmet Connie, which is how I began to think of her, had just flown to New York. So, I mean, really, I can walk that 500 metres to school. And because she did that and I did that, Joe, a fellow from the brain injury support group who'd had a stroke and who couldn't even make it to his own letterbox, finally did. And his words were the really inspiring part. He comes along to the group the following week and says, well, I said to myself, if Karen can walk her kid to school blind, I can get to my letterbox. So I did.
That's incredible.
I just think that's fabulous.
Yeah, the ripple effect. You never know who, your story is going to impact and what they're going to achieve because of it. That's so amazing. So we mentioned your keynote there. Did you have any sort of public or motivational speaking experience before, or was it a whole new sort of skill set you had to learn?
Sorry for the interruption, but I just have to tell you about Give the Goodness Global, an incredible global outreach project run by American veteran Cody Grannon. Cody is passionate about helping those in need all over the world, whether it's raising money for a specific family he's met while traveling in Southeast Asia, giving food and supplies to people who would otherwise go without, or simply donating his time to help wherever help is needed. Please check out Instagram.com/GiveTheGoodnessGlobal to find out more, to donate money to their current cause, or to buy Give the Goodness Global merch, all the profits of which go straight back to helping those in need. Plus, 10% of all profits from Jessica Grace Coleman's book, Intentional Travel Transformation, are donated to this brilliant cause. You can find out more about this at traveltransformationcoach.com/books. So remember, be kind and give the goodness always. Thank you. And now back to the Travel Transformation Podcast.
I was admitted as a barrister, so I had done that kind of courtroom advocacy training. So it's not that I was necessarily shy to stand up and speak in front of people, but actually turning it into a role as a keynote speaker did require a bit of a shift of mindset, I guess. When I was still working in my lawyer role, they asked me one year to speak at their Are You OK Day breakfast. So it's kind of a mental health awareness day. And I got such amazing feedback from people that as it slowly became clear that the legal role really wasn't suiting me anymore, I thought, maybe I can pursue that. So I found myself a coaching group, and they turned my headspace around from, hey, I just want to tell my story and people will get from it what they will, to some very clear advice to say, no, you need to extract the message, the moral, I guess, of the stories that you tell. And so I went about that process. So now I both tell people the stories from my own experiences, but I also help them to see their stories in my story, because everyone's challenges have so many common elements.
Another thing you say is just because you can't do it the same doesn't mean you can't do it, which I love. Have you always been a sort of adaptable, resilient person, do you think? Or has it been since your vision's changed that you've really sort of changed your mindset around this?
I think I have definitely grown in the time. So it's been 7 years now since I lost my sight. I've definitely grown in that time. Oh, well, number one, I think that one of the fundamentals towards being resilient is having an excellent support crew around you. And I had family members who flew back from Germany. My mum and dad actually did the hour-long drive to the hospital that I was in so often that one of the neighbours to the hospital actually offered that they park in her driveway rather than paying the fairly exorbitant parking fees at the hospital, which I think is just amazing. So, yeah, look, I mean, I think that I really had that really strong support network there already. And I think that helped me dramatically. But also, I'm a big believer in taking the tiny seeds of courage or resilience or whatever it might be from the things that you encounter across the course of your life to help fuel your response to the next challenge. So I was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes when I was 20, which of course was like just the other day. That absolutely led me to appreciate that, sometimes things are just unfair. You don't necessarily do anything to deserve them. I'm the only one in my really huge family with this particular form of diabetes. It taught me that it's okay not to be able to do or to have all the things that everybody else has, like donuts or cake for breakfast, but also that you need to take your limitations with a grain of salt. So when you have diabetes, people are always asking you, oh, can you eat that? And I would say, well, yes, my mouth works just the same as everybody else's. And so I think it's that kind of saying, well, no, I don't see clearly, but that's not to say that I can't do things that do involve eyesight. My eldest daughter has just started university and she's doing a visual arts degree. And we are quite often trotting off to some art gallery or another with, I'm sure, people wondering who this woman is walking around an art gallery with a white cane. I feel about as at home as I do when I'm required to stand outside a bookshop, with people wondering what on earth I must be doing there. So, yes, I think it's that kind of holding your limitations lightly because they may not actually be as all-encompassing as you think they are.
Yeah, definitely. And in a similar vein to that, I'm all about stepping outside your comfort zone. And I know you've done a lot of this recently as well, like since your vision has changed. You said you've walked, climbed, tandem cycled, flown in light planes, jumbo jets, and hot air balloons. So did you seek out adventures like this before, or is it something you've started doing in the past few years? And what is it that makes you want to do all these adventurous things?
Yeah, I didn't necessarily seek them out as intentionally as I do now. A lot of those things I did on a trip that I did to tropical North Queensland. Actually, it must have been early 2020 because COVID-19 was just this thing that everybody had started talking about. And I did it with a tour group, a specialised tour group for people who are blind or have low vision. And so there were about 10 of us, perhaps. But, we stayed in regular hotels. Yes, we had guides to show us about when we went sightseeing. The hot air balloon thing was just an optional extra. And I said, well, I want to do it. And the guide says, well, you will need to be up at about 4 a.m. because you've got to drive for an hour and then you need to do all the bits and pieces to be able to be in the air by the time the sun rises because they want it to be, like a sunrise adventure. And I said, obviously, that's fine. So, yes, I roped in one of the others and off we went. And it's still one of the most magical things that I think I've ever seen, let alone done.
Nice. I wanted to ask about the hot air balloon because I went on one last year, I think, just in England. And the guy was telling us that like 1 out of every 3 landings is basically a crash landing where you go on the side and you have to like climb out. So how was your landing? I want to know.
Yep, just exactly like that. So we actually landed in I think it was a cane field. It was one of those big open areas, but there had obviously been vegetation that was either cut off, but I think like kind of cut off and then crushed. And yes, there was a bit of a crash landing. My main impression, I guess, of the hot air ballooning was just the noise of it.
Mm.
The burners are so loud and so hot when you're standing right underneath. But then, as a consequence, when they turn the burners off and you just coast, it's just the most serene, amazing experience.
Yeah, I've not really thought about like the contrast between the loud burners and then when they turn it off, and you're right, it's just so peaceful, and the difference between the like when you have to shout over the sound of the the burners and then it's suddenly silent is very, very special. So if you're listening to this and you've never been in a hot air balloon, highly recommended it. Okay, you mentioned you have an interest in meditation practices and the Stoic philosophy, which I'm intrigued about. Can you tell me about this?
So, this is something that I have really embraced since losing my sight. One of the main challenges initially was just the boredom of it. I said to my mum at one point, was I just really shallow and like image obsessed? Because I'm so bored. And she says to me, well, no, you just used to read all the time and, you liked art and movies. And so it's kind of normal that you are a little bit at a loose end. And so I think to relieve the boredom and also to smooth out the way that I was dealing with my frustration. Something as little as, I don't know, I just dropped something small on the floor and I can't see to find it. I can't see to pick it up, and that's a tiny thing. The level of frustration and the anger that can accumulate as a result of that is massive. So I felt like I needed a practice. So not just a one-off thing, but something that I really engaged with on an ongoing basis that would help to kind of build my equanimity, the kind of inner smoothness that lets you encounter frustration without it doing your head in. So I downloaded an app. I'm not sure if it's available in the UK. Actually, they have 3 different, quite short meditations on there every single day. And so I don't know whether it was in consequence of or just a happy coincidence, I came across a book on Stoic philosophy. And they talk a lot about the love of fate, that kind of, I think they refer to it as amor fati, that says not just it's okay that this thing is happening to me, but I am confident, I take joy in the fact that this thing is happening for me, and I really feel like I fell into the practice of law as a young person, and I don't know that it was ever necessarily going to be my passion. I see other people, other lawyers around the place, my husband's one of them, who has an extraordinary passion for the work and the people that he's helping. And I never really felt like that. Whereas I think this work as a keynote speaker, where I do get to help other lawyers to be better through the challenges that they will encounter in their practice and in their life, is a much better fit for me, for my kind of worldview and my life experience.
Can you remember what book that was that made you sort of feel like this?
Yeah, so it is Ryan Holiday's Stoicism for the Modern World or something like that. So Ryan Holiday actually has quite a few books on Stoicism, and he has a podcast and a YouTube channel and all sorts of things. He's quite prolific to an extent that I'm somewhat envious of. And yes, He talks a lot about the lessons from Marcus Aurelius's Meditations and how that can be applied in the modern world. He refers to various figures from the military and from the sporting world that really demonstrate how those principles can be applied in everyday life. And I found that really inspiring.
Yeah, I'll definitely find that book then, and I'll put it in the show notes for anyone who's interested, because that sounds like something I'd be interested in reading as well. Okay, great. So I have two last questions. First of all, where can people find you online if they want to connect or if they're interested in your keynote speech? And is there anything else you want to mention or any last message you want to get across before we go?
So my website is either karenmccarthy.au, so no .com, just .au. So KarenMccarthy.au, or KD, D for Delta, McCarthy.com. I'm on LinkedIn as...
I've got it here. KD McCarthy Speaks, I've got.
There we go. It's really quite unhelpful to have a common name like Karen and then to pair it with a common surname like McCarthy. I grew up with a far more unusual surname, so I curse my husband whenever I find it difficult to come up with a unique email address or something like that. But yes, and I do hang out on LinkedIn quite a lot. I'm very keen to connect with other people who either just have interests in the same things or who are in the position where they are booking speakers for conferences or other events, or for that matter, people in law firms themselves who might be looking for either just a bit of inspiration in their feed or for someone to speak to their people.
Right. And do you do that just around the Brisbane area or online?
So far, it has solely been in Australia. I'm off to Melbourne in about a month's time for a big conference down there. But, you know, I'm perfectly happy to renew my passport and start jetting off all over the world. So, you know, bring on those bookings.
Yeah, so get in touch if anyone's interested. And I'll put the links in the show notes as well. So great. Thank you so much for coming on. It's been really great talking to you and finding out all about your journey. So thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for listening to the Travel Transformation Podcast with me, Jessica Grace Coleman. If you enjoyed this episode, I would really appreciate it if you could please subscribe, rate and review, and spread the word, because it's my mission to help as many people as possible to flip the script on their lives and transform through travel. And remember, life is short, so let's make sure it's nothing short of amazing. Until next time, I'll catch you on the flip side.